Hello, everyone, and welcome to the first episode of Red Zone Hard Knocks New Orleans Saints Edition. This is your host, Adele, with the Red Zone Rewind. We're going to get right into it. This series is going to cover the New Orleans Saints from the beginning to the end of their season, wherever it takes them. The beauty of this is we have no idea where they're going to end up. They could go to the Super Bowl. They could win 2 games. There really is so many things that could happen along the course of a season. We've done something like this before where it didn't follow the entire season. So this year we're going to cover the whole thing. There's going to be a simulcast of a podcast version of this along with a video version of this. The video version, this episode isn't going to be fantastic in terms of the video version just because of the fact that really what we're covering today is the roster and the storylines heading into the season. But going forward, we're going to be able to have game clips that are going to showcase exactly what's happening in these games, depending on wins, losses, and what have you with those storylines. But welcome to the show. We're very excited about this. This episode is episode 1 entitled The Prologue. What we're going to be covering today is the recap of what the Saints did to get here. We're going to be covering their Week 1 matchup with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. We're going to be recapping their 3 preseason games and how they're faring, some trends we're seeing, some issues that we're seeing that are going on there, and really look at the big storylines of Season 62 for these Saints. What's going to be interesting? The league voted. We put this to a vote, and the Saints were chosen as the big team to look at for this season. And there are so many interesting things to watch for. So without further ado, let's get into the offseason recap and take a look at what these Saints really did to upgrade from last season to this season. So starting with free agency, one of the first things they did is they went out and they signed Malcolm Jenkins to a big 4-year deal. He actually returns. He used to be a Saint, and he returns to the Saints after a stint with the Eagles in which he won a Super Bowl. He comes back to New Orleans, gives them that veteran presence at safety. Big money, big 4-year deal. So he's getting a ton of money to come back and play for the Saints. He's going to be paired with Marcus Williams in the secondary, who we're going to talk a bit more about as this goes on. The second biggest signing, and my personal favorite, was the addition of Emmanuel Sanders into the receiving core. He is going to be paired with Michael Thomas this season. Emmanuel Sanders is very underrated. He was fantastic for Denver in their Super Bowl run. He was great for the 49ers last year down the stretch and was key for them in the postseason. And now he comes to the Saints where in a lot of offenses, Sanders would be a number 1, and here he's a number 2. And he gets to be number 2 behind the top-rated receiver in the league right now in Thomas. Giving Spencer really one of the better, if not the best, 1-2 punches at wide receiver in football. Another signing that was made for agency was quarterback Jameis Winston, who had to settle for a 1-year deal. He bet on himself, and after a year that he threw 30 interceptions, he threw a 33-30 type season, he was rewarded with a 1-year contract worth $1 million. And for a guy who's still as young as he is, he's just coming off his rookie deal, he probably expected more. And it's going to be interesting to see if he gets a chance in New Orleans outside of this 1-year deal. We're going to talk more about his preseason going forward here. He joins the quarterback room with Drew Brees and Taysom Hill, who has had quite an interesting preseason, quite frankly, an interesting career. Finally, the last big signing worth mentioning was the addition of former wide receiver, now converted running back, Ty Montgomery, former Green Bay Packer and Baltimore Raven. Montgomery is a bit of a dual threat. He runs the football pretty well, and he catches the ball well out of the backfield. He joins a running back room of Latavius Murray and Alvin Kamara. Montgomery is what we like to call injury insurance for Kamara, and if something does happen to their top running back, expect Montgomery to get a lot of that look. But a cheap deal for another offensive weapon is just something that the Saints do really well. They're really able to get a lot of great weapons in here for Brees. Going into the draft, they didn't have many draft picks, but one of the big ones they did was the addition of Cesar Ruiz in the first round. If you can see if you're watching this here, He was given a hidden dev, meaning that he is likely going to be star or higher, that his development is going to be faster than that of an average player. Ruiz is 21 years old. Like I said, their first-round pick, a very strong player and an above-average pass blocker already at this point in his career. On the offensive line, he joins between Eric McCoy and Ryan Ramczyk, so expect this fit here in between these two, along with left tackle Teron Armstead, to really accelerate his development. I mean, this is a line that's going to be really strong, and if your first-round rookie is your weak point, you're in a pretty good spot. Like I said, that they didn't have many picks. We'll look at one of their next intriguing picks in linebacker Zach Bond out of Wisconsin. This is a guy who we're not sure is going to get a ton of playing time. We're going to talk about his preseason again. Very raw athlete. He's very fast. He can tackle in the open field really well. But he's got an uphill battle. He's going to have to face off the likes of Kiko Alonso, recently signed Clay Matthews, and this linebacker core has some veterans, so he's going to have to fight for a spot. Tight end Adam Troutman is another one of the draft picks worth looking at. He's from Dayton College. He's behind Josh Hill and Jared Cook at this point, but with his speed, with his he really excelled in the 40 time. He's a really fast tight end. He's an interesting weapon for this offense. Expect him to definitely earn a spot and fight for snaps. I think you could see this guy getting in on 3 tight end sets and being able to be a guy that can be a matchup nightmare for linebackers. So be on the lookout for Adam Troutman going forward. Finally, their last pick in their draft, once again, they only had 4 picks, was Tommy Stevens out of Mississippi State. Tommy hasn't seen the field much in the preseason, but once again, he's another athletic tight end. Not much of a blocker, but a decent pass catcher. It's just going to be tough for Tommy to make the roster unless the Saints do decide to go forward with 4 tight ends here. With that, we'll move on to the waivers. So the 2-round waiver period that Coach Spencer completed. His first pick in the waivers, his second pick rather, was Quincy Enunwa, wide receiver, former Jet. Did recover from the injuries he had enough to come back and play for the Saints. Enunwa is a very solid player. He is not a number 1 by any means, a very strong number 2, and an even stronger number 3. And who even says he's going to be the number 3 in this offense? With the Saints having Traquan Smith, Benny Fowler, and the young Deontay Harris, who we're going to talk a bit about. Enunwa just seems like, a little bit of pick your poison type of player, a little bit of embarrassment of riches type of thing. If you can have another good wide receiver in your wide receiver room, who cares? They're not paying him much money, and he'll fit right in there, barring injury, of course, to these other players. And otherwise, he'd see a lot bigger of a role. The other waiver pick, their first-round waiver selection, was outside linebacker Clay Matthews. He figures to be an edge rusher for them. Excuse me. Matthews is definitely the tail end of his career. He's purely an edge threat at this point. Expect him to get on passing downs and try to assist Cameron Jordan in this defensive line and getting after the quarterback. Once again, a veteran Saints team that has playoff aspirations, just adding another good player to their rotation. With that, instead of focusing just on the roster, let's take a look at the coach. So the big thing that people are going to talk about this cycle, this season, everything is how is Spencer going to fare as coach of the New Orleans Saints? How is he going to live up to expectations? And that's why we were so excited about the fact that he earned Hard Knocks for the first season of the cycle. Spencer has had trials and tribulations as a coach. He had a very, very frustrating and downright embarrassing stint as the head coach of the Eagles when he first joined the league, moving on to Pittsburgh, where it was struggle after struggle. There were some very bad personnel decisions made by the front office that saw him fall behind in terms of roster building. And now a fresh start in his hometown with the New Orleans Saints. It's going to be very interesting to see how he lives up to this hype. Right now around Red Zone, around the Red Zone Media Network and the Red Zone Podcast Network, there have been many predictions. There have been many prediction shows that have come out and discussed his outlook on the season, and many are lukewarm on him to downright cold. We've seen a prediction that he would finish 2-14. We have seen predictions that show him with a ceiling of about 9 wins, but usually it's right between that 4, 5, 6, 7 win range, and always last in the NFC South to compete with third spot with the Panthers in most prediction scenarios. It's going to be interesting. The most pressure Spencer's ever had in his coaching career is right now arguably the best roster in the entire league, and in a division that has some competition but is definitely winnable. It's going to be interesting. It's going to be interesting if the practice that he put in, there were reports that Spencer and his entire coaching staff went out to Colorado for the entire offseason and basically did a powwow. They did an analytics powwow. They researched just football concepts and schemes and rebuilt a playbook. He met with Drew Brees. It's going to be very interesting to see if this can all come together. The time has been put in, but now it's time to see if the execution can happen. And with such an important season ahead, with these roster, with the age of some of these players and some big decisions coming, there's no doubt the pressure is going to be on such a young coach who really hasn't proven much yet. On that note, let's just start looking at the season. Okay, so season 62 is important to the Saints for so many reasons. With first being their quarterback. Drew Brees is likely going into his final season as quarterback of the New Orleans Saints and quarterback in our league. Being at the age he is, at the age of 41, being around the league for so long, it may be time for him to hang it up. And with only one championship under his belt, and that championship being over 11 years ago, one has to wonder if Brees has confidence in this coaching staff. The last time he made a Super Bowl in red zone was last cycle in the first season with Coach Mike Mojica. Now with Coach Spencer, does Brees have the confidence to run one season, then come back if things don't go well? What if it is a 6 to 7 win season? It's going to be very interesting to go inside the mind of Drew Brees in the offseason, and maybe he does have a tough decision to make. Maybe he just doesn't believe that this coaching staff is the one that's going to lead him, and instead of testing free agency and looking elsewhere, he hangs it up. So Brees is a big decision. He's a very expensive player at this point of his career. There's no doubt that he's declining as a player, but will remain to be seen, a storyline all year on his performance, and ultimately a big decision coming from him at the end of the year. The question after him is the future of the Saints on this roster, or will the Saints be looking elsewhere to make a decision at the quarterback position? Like I mentioned before, Jameis Winston comes in on a 1-year contract to essentially back up Brees, learn a lot from him. Brees brings the mentor role to Winston, and Winston's going to get a lot of practice time. He's going to get a lot of reps behind Brees. But to go in as a backup and just to know that your job this year is to learn the scheme, learn the offense, very important for Winston. Very big year for him to develop. He still has a great arm, can still throw the heck out of the football. He's a very talented player. The issue with him has always been his decision-making in an offense that's primary focus is going to be to limit the mistakes of its quarterbacks. Winston could find a home here, but it's on him and his work ethic to make it work. The next player is an intriguing one in quarterback Taysom Hill, the 30-year-old who has been a career backup to this point. He's quite an interesting story, as most of you know, in that he plays quarterback, he plays running back, he plays wide receiver, he plays tight end, he plays a gunner on special teams. This guy lines up everywhere. And from what we've seen this preseason, and once again, we're going to get to that, Taysom Hill is being used all over the place. He runs the football. He throws the football. He's even going to catch the football. So there's no doubt that there's a place on this offense for him. But is he the future? Is he going to be given more of a role after Brees steps away? This guy was undrafted a couple years ago. Like I said, he's a little older. But the Saints believed in him so much that they handed him a major tag after this season. They're actually going to pay him $16 million to keep him on roster next season. So that's a decision that Spencer's going to have to make. Is Taysom Hill worth keeping around as that developmental guy despite his age? Is he worth keeping around to be that kind of trick player, that gadget player, a guy that's just so useful in so many ways? Do I believe that the future of the New Orleans Saints after Drew Brees is on this roster? I don't believe so. I do believe that with the first round pick that the Saints will have going into this first draft, they'll be looking to find his successor, or maybe even later in that draft. But I don't believe that Jameis Winston or Taysom Hill will be that person. Moving on to our second story is an alarming one. It's the cap room. It's the big decisions in terms of salaries, cuts, signings, trades that the Saints are going to have to make heading into next season. And I know we're really looking at season 62, but I always like to think about we're always going to cover the signings. We're going to cover the re-signings. We're going to cover the contract extensions. We're going to cover all of that throughout this podcast. And big re-signings are coming, and there's not going to be a lot of room. In fact, the 2021 salary cap for season 62 will project around 219 to 220 million, while the Saints will expect to be at 250 million in terms of the salaries they'll be holding next year due to some big extensions that they gave, especially the ones to Cameron Jordan and Michael Thomas. So they're going to be about 30 million over the cap, and tough decisions will have to be made, especially with the fact that big extensions are coming. So it really puts more pressure on this season. It really puts more pressure on Spencer to run it with this roster. There's no regrets this season. You're not going to lose any players this season. You have to run it with this veteran group, and if it doesn't work out, if you don't make the playoffs, which would be a massive disappointment, not only do you miss the playoffs with this team, but you don't get to run it back with this really talented group. You're going to lose good players. The big one that we're expecting them to lose is going to be safety Marcus Williams, who is on an expiring rookie contract. He's only making $1.3 million, but they'll have to free up $30 million in cap room to even discuss extending him. And with such a talented player, he's going to want great money. Marcus Williams is one of the best young safeties in our league. And this is just the tip of the iceberg in terms of players that the Saints may be losing going into next season, which once again, like I've said throughout this first few minutes here, winning this season is paramount. This group will not be more talented next year than it is this year. Moving on to our next big story here, with that kind of coincides with the salaries that we're looking at here, are the big extensions coming. We just talked about Marcus Williams. We're looking at guys like Alvin Kamara, their big running back. He's one of the best weapons in the league. He is only making $2.3 million this year, but he's going to want a big extension. He's 25 years old. This guy does everything. He runs the ball. He catches the ball. He's one of the fastest running backs in the league. Kamara's going to want big money, and once again, freeing up that cap room to bring him in is going to be huge for the Saints. So once again, big decisions to be made. Are they willing to cut $30 million worth of players to even get to the point where they can discuss an extension with Kamara? Another guy besides Marcus Williams and Kamara is going to be defensive tackle Sheldon Rankins. He's the best defensive tackle currently on the roster. He's a young player. He's one of their more disruptive players in their front seven. Once again, are they willing to get to a point where they have to replace their best defensive tackle? If they don't, the depth behind him isn't great with Malcolm Brown, Onameda, Margus Hunt. There aren't great players here behind him, so then looking early in the draft would be key for them. But right there are three big decisions they're going to have to make, and it's going to be one of the old addition by subtraction. If they do extend Rankins, there's no doubt that they lost a veteran player due to cuts. Finally, the final big storyline that I look at for the Saints going into season 62 is their competition. I mean, you always look at the division. You always look at who are you going to be facing 6 times a season with the right to get into the playoffs. And the NFC South is interesting. The storylines between these 4 teams First, you look at the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Tom Brady comes in. Gronkowski comes out of retirement. They hire Toff to be their head coach. Toff, a guy who's never won a title, but he's flirted with one. The expectations for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers are very high. They're expected to run away with this division. Most are picking them to appear in the NFC Divisional to the Conference Championship, with some even saying that they're going to win the Super Bowl. And I can't say I disagree with those takes because this Buccaneers team is so talented, and the veteran presence of a Tom Brady only elevates them. The difference between the Saints and the Buccaneers, they're so close, right? They're so close in terms of their talent, is that the Buccaneers have a more proven head coach. Toff, on paper, has been a better coach than Spencer has to this point of his career. You look at the Carolina Panthers with Malik. Malik comes out of retirement to come back to red zone, which we love. A lot of interesting moves for the Panthers. They spent all 7 of their draft picks on their defense. They're completely rebuilding that defensive side of the football after the retirement of Luke Kuechly and moving on from that secondary that was so elite a couple years ago with Josh Norman and company. On the offensive side of the ball, Christian McCaffrey, best weapon in the game, arguably. But you're bringing a new quarterback in Teddy Bridgewater. Young Teddy, who blew his knee out 4 years ago. Can he redeem himself? Can he be a great starting quarterback? And with a good coach in Malik, the Panthers will be good in no time, I would think. But this season leaves much to be desired. We don't know. We don't know if he's going to be ready to go right away. Finally, the Atlanta Falcons with Kelly Honeycutt coming out of retirement. Once again, we don't know. It's hard when these coaches come out of retirement. Did they stay in touch with the game? Did they follow analytics? Did they follow schemes and styles and everything like that? There's rumors that Matt Ryan and Julio Jones are on the block and that this team is going into full-blown rebuild mode. And if that's true, that would ascend the Saints, in my opinion, into at least the conversation of competing with Tampa Bay for this division. If Matt Ryan and Julio Jones aren't on the Atlanta Falcons, this is not right now. I still don't think this is a great football team. I think that the talking heads out there are giving way too much credit to this team. If they move on from Matt Ryan or Julio Jones, this isn't a very talented football team. So with the way this division is currently set, Spencer's got more head coaching experience right now than Malik and Kelly do. So do I think it's out of this world to suggest that Spencer could compete for the second place in the NFC South or even luck into a first place? I don't think it's crazy. And the roster is going to be the big reason for that. With that, let's take a look at the games because there's been 3 preseason games. We're not going to cover the 4th because the 4th preseason game for this Saints team is essentially we're going to roll our rookies, our undrafted rookies, and our backups out there for guys that aren't going to be on the team next week and really just let them have a tryout for the other teams that they might go play for. This Saints roster is essentially set. So let's just take a look at what has been happening with this team throughout the first 3 weeks. They're 1-2, so they beat the Rams 34-17 in Week 1 of the preseason on the road in LA. A few tidbits to take away from this game. First of all, there was no Drew Brees. Drew Brees didn't play in this game. He does play in Weeks 2 and 3. The Saints only threw 14 passes in this game, which I found to be very interesting. In a game where it would be very interesting to see how Jameis Winston fits in with the offense, the Saints only decided to give him 2 attempts throwing the football. Taysom Hill did have 12 attempts. He completed 7 of 12 for 99 yards and a touchdown. Despite getting sacked 4 times, he was running around in the pocket a lot. He did have 32 rushing yards as well. Taysom Hill saw most of the action. He had most of the volatile plays in terms of 3 fumbles. He put the ball on the ground 3 times, but he's an exciting player. He had over 100 total all-purpose yards, and there's something to be said of the fact that he got more snaps than Winston. On the ground, Latavius Murray had a great game. On 4 carries, he had 86 yards, including a long 64-yard touchdown. Ty Montgomery got the most of the work. Alvin Kamara likely not going to play much in the preseason. He only saw 2 snaps in this game. Montgomery accounted for 63 yards on 15 carries against the Rams. Also, he caught 2 balls for 13 yards. One of the interesting things I noticed was that wide receiver Deontay Harris, he's a second-year player from Assumption. He caught 62 yards on 3 balls and a touchdown. We'll talk more about Harris as each week goes on. Outside of that, the big thing on defense for the Saints was the fact that they forced 7 interceptions of the Rams. This is such an anomaly. This is the ultimate preseason statistic, the fact that you could catch 7 interceptions in a game. Excuse me. 2 of those interceptions went to Chauncey Gardner-Johnson out of Florida. He's a player to watch. So Chauncey Gardner-Johnson is a very fast young safety, his second year in the league. If Marcus Williams does decide to opt to free agency, Chauncey Gardner-Johnson is someone to watch to replace him alongside Malcolm Jenkins. So I do believe that the insurance policy is here in Gardner-Johnson in case Marcus Williams decides to walk. And with 2 interceptions in his first preseason game, not a bad start for that kid. Outside of that, the Saints had 7 receptions from 6 different players, so really everyone got in on the fun there. A nice win for the Saints to start off the cycle in the preseason. Still a little concerning that the offense struggled as much as it did despite having 6 extra possessions, because the Saints did have 1 turnover themselves, but a win is a win. With that, we're going to move on to week 2 of the preseason. This time the Saints traveled out to Pittsburgh to face King John and his Steelers. The Saints did fall in this game 19-13. Let's take a look at a couple of the issues that I have from this game. First thing, so Brees actually saw his first action of the preseason. He completed 9 of 16 passes for 120 yards, 0 touchdowns, and 2 interceptions. So Brees kind of had a shaky start to his preseason. Was protected perfectly. The entire starting offensive line was on the field, and he was protected perfectly. He didn't have any sacks faced, but the 2 interceptions were a little alarming, but preseason he's just getting tuned up again. Taysom Hill actually did not throw any passes in this game, so Jameis Winston saw the majority of the backup work. Winston finished 13 of 19 for 169 yards, a touchdown, and 2 interceptions. So Winston, once again, showing his turnover bug still is there. Looking at the running game, once again, the Saints' run game continues to be strong. Kamara saw more snaps in this game. He did have 6 carries for 18 yards and a short touchdown run. Latavius Murray, 4.9 yards per carry after 10 attempts for 49 yards. And once again, Taysom Hill had a couple carries. The Saints' offensive line is going to be very important for their success, and they're very talented. It's arguably the best line in the league. As we talked about before, Cesar Ruiz, one of the top guard prospects in the league, is their weakest link. And I mean, that's a fantastic weakness to have. So if they can run the football and limit the mistakes of their quarterback, this offense is going to be fun to watch. Moving on to the receiving core, once again, Ty Montgomery had a big day through the air, 4 catches for 41 yards. Once again, young wide receiver Deontay Harris, 2 catches for 19 and a touchdown, giving him his 2nd touchdown of the preseason. Really kind of jumping up the depth chart there. Guys like Benny Fowler, Traquan Smith, they contributed. Still haven't seen much of Quincy Enunwa yet. He finished with 0 catches on the day. But still interesting to see Deontay Harris finishing 2 straight weeks with a touchdown. Moving on to the defense. 2 turnovers on the day. They did lose the take-give 4-2. A kind of a concerning trend through 2 weeks of the preseason that the 7 interceptions in the Rams game is a total anomaly, and we'll discuss that. But losing the take-give with this offense is always concerning to me. P.J. Williams and Marcus Williams with an interception each. Marcus Williams now has 2 interceptions on the preseason and 1 sack for Trey Hendrickson. Saints defense didn't necessarily play bad, but anytime you turn the football over 4 times, you're usually going to find a way to lose that game. And finally, we're going to move on to the 3rd preseason game. This is, we usually like to call this a dress rehearsal. This is where the Saints saw most of their starters playing. Let's talk about Drew Brees. He finished the day with 101 yards, 2 touchdowns, 1 interception, 8 of 12 passing. Meanwhile, Jameis Winston and Taysom Hill kind of flip-flopped roles again. Winston only throwing 4 passes, while Hill, threw 8. So not a ton of passes for the backups, only 12. But Taysom Hill did more of the work. He also threw 2 touchdowns on just 8 attempts. So pretty interesting there. Once again, the run game did very well. 2 running backs over 4 yards per carry in Murray and Montgomery. Kamara once again only had 1 carry, so nothing really to write home about there. 2 big takeaways from the receiving core in this game. First of all, Josh Hill, backup tight end to Jared Cook, caught 3 touchdown passes in just 5 receptions. And then wide receiver Traquan Smith had his biggest game with a touchdown and 48 yards. Once again, Deontay Harris, 27 yards on 2 catches, and Quincy Enunwa did get his first catch for 6 yards. So he's getting worked into the offense a little more. Once again, Ty Montgomery getting 4 receptions as well. So I think we've learned that Montgomery is definitely going to be the Kamara replacement if something does in fact happen to him. So let's look at it as a whole, okay? So you're 1-2 in the preseason. We don't really care about the record. What we care more about are the trends that we're going into with the preseason, okay? How is this team translating into the regular season? Because as much as people want to say it, yes, these teams are out trying new things. They are out testing young players, seeing what they're made of. But the scheme is the scheme, and it's going to be interesting to see how this scheme carries into the regular season, because right now Saints quarterbacks are 6-6 in terms of their touchdown-interception ratio in 3 games. The key to this offense is going to be limiting turnovers, and right now with the fact that they have turned the ball over 6 times and thrown 6 touchdowns, that is a trend that I do not like. Once again, one thing to expect going into the regular season is that the workload that Ty Montgomery is getting, the 21 rushes, the 10 receptions is going to go to Kamara, and I expect Kamara to do more with that workload than Montgomery's had. Although Montgomery, I would say, has earned himself a roster spot with the fact that he has actually had a really good preseason and could actually be a good trade candidate for a team out there who needs a dual threat. The biggest concern for me through the preseason is the fact that outside of a 7-interception game, which really isn't going to happen. I mean, how many times are you going to run into a team that's going to keep throwing the ball and smashing their head against the wall after 7 interceptions? The Rams threw 7 interceptions, a young quarterback. It wasn't Jared Goff. It wasn't any of their true backups. It was a young rookie. Outside of that, the Saints have only turned over opposing offenses 3 times and have given it away 8 times, meaning that outside of a total anomaly, the Saints they're losing it 8-3. Going into the regular season, that cannot be a trend that continues. They have to find a way to not turn the ball over. The defense has been fantastic in terms of taking away the football. Obviously, I'm not going to take away that 7-interception game from them. The fact that Marcus Williams has 2 picks, Chauncey Gardner-Johnson has 2 interceptions already. Having 10 interceptions in 3 games is something definitely to say, but to say that a 7-interception game is something that you can hang your hat on and hope it happens again it's very rare. So the fact that every single game the Saints continue to throw at least 2 interceptions, it's a pretty alarming statistic for me. Moving on to, let's take a look and talk about a couple of the depth chart battles. There really are only a few I'm interested in. Like I said, this Saints team is pretty set. They kind of know who their dogs they're going to war with here this season. But let's look at the first battle I was interested in the battle between Jameis Winston and Taysom Hill. It appears to me that Taysom Hill is going to win the backup job, but Jameis Winston is scheduled to start the preseason Week 4 game. I do believe that this will be a split game, half to half, between Winston and Hill, and the winner will emerge victorious. I believe all 3 quarterbacks make the roster, but I give the edge to Taysom Hill. I think he is a little more useful in this offense to them. Like I said, he can run the football. There are packages in this offense where he can split out wide as a wide receiver. I do find it very interesting, the amount of work he's been getting, and I don't see that they will just anoint Jameis Winston unless they see something from him in preseason Week 4 that really just kind of lights up the scoreboard here and shows them that he's a project worth putting in that second quarterback spot. The second spot that I'm really interested in is the wide receiver position behind Michael Thomas and Emmanuel Sanders. So I believe that Tre'Quan Smith is the favorite to be the number 3, but do not discount Deontay Harris, who's had a great preseason. I don't think Benny Fowler is going to make the roster. I certainly don't think he's going to be in a position where he's the 3rd or 4th wide receiver. I expect him to be released. Quincy Enunwa will stick around. He's a very solid receiver. But the way I see it now is that it's going to go Michael Thomas, Emmanuel Sanders, Tre'Quan Smith, Deontay Harris, and Quincy Enunwa at the 5th spot. I love the upside of Tre'Quan Smith and the upside of Deontay Harris. These 2 wide receivers may be the future of their team with their ages being 24 and 22. So expect Spencer to get these guys some snaps. And once again, Deontay Harris is having a great preseason. I would find it very difficult to bench this kid after the preseason that he's had. And finally, the only thing I look at outside of that, Josh Hill, I would say he's cemented the backup role for sure over rookie Adam Troutman. Is Jared Cook's job safe? I would say yes. I think there's too much money invested in Jared Cook to ever consider benching him. But Josh Hill's preseason has been a good one, and expect to see a lot of 2 tight end sets. They're going to find ways to get him on the field. He's simply too good a backup just to sit on the bench. With that, we're going to look at the final piece for today's episode, and that is going to be looking ahead. We're going to be looking ahead to their Week 1 opponent, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Like I said, preseason Week 4 for this team it's ultimately, I would say, a tryout for these 2 quarterbacks to see what position they're going to be on the depth chart. The Saints are basically set at this point. They know who they're going into Week 1 with. So let's take a look at their Week 1 opponent. Brady, the big acquisition, right? So the Saints will be hosting the Buccaneers. It'll be a home game at Mercedes-Benz Superdome. I love that the way the Saints defense matches up with this Buccaneers offense. They're gonna put Marcus Lattimore on Mike Evans. They're going to put some sort of combination of P.J. Williams, Janoris Jenkins on Chris Godwin. After these two, the receiving core is a little shaky. I expect to see Tyler Johnson from the Minnesota Golden Gophers get some snaps. Scotty Miller, the second year from Bowling Green State. But outside of these two, the wide receiving core doesn't really scare me. It's the tight ends. The combination of Rob Gronkowski and O.J. Howard. Demario Davis is going to have his hands full with Rob Gronkowski. And then Alex Anzalone is going to be roaming the field trying to cover O.J. Howard, because expect the Buccaneers, they're going to roll a lot of 2 tight end sets out. They're going to utilize both these very talented tight ends. So expect the Saints defense to have a little trouble containing these guys, but they have the personnel, and I love the matchup. The advantage for the Saints is the pass rush. The offensive line of the Buccaneers is very talented inside. Outside, the tackles of Donovan Smith and Tristan Wirfs. These are going to be 2 offensive tackles that I think will lose the battles to Cameron Jordan and Marcus Davenport of the New Orleans Saints. Especially Tristan Wirfs. I think he's really going to struggle against that combination. Expect to see Spencer move Cameron Jordan around that defensive line and try to get him on the rookie to get that superstar versus rookie situation. The ball is going to need to come out of Brady's hands fast. The big weakness of the Buccaneers, especially on their defense, is their secondary. Carlton Davis, Sean Murphy-Bunting, Jamel Dean. This cornerback group is not a group to be excited about, and the safeties are young and inexperienced. Michael Thomas, Emmanuel Sanders are going to have big days against this secondary. If the Saints can limit turnovers, if the Saints can be effective passing the football, I could see how they could win this game. They're going to have a loud, raucous crowd at the home opener at Mercedes-Benz Superdome. Tom Brady's first start as a Buccaneer. Toff, we know, has been known to play down to competition, has been known to make big mistakes in the past. This Week 1 is setting up to be a massive chance for the Saints for an upset. Right now, they are not favored. I am going to give my prediction that the New Orleans Saints are going to win and start at 1-0 at home with a big divisional win over the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. The big key to success for them is their take-give. If they can win the turnover battle, limit Drew Brees' mistakes, if Spencer can stay inside his mind and inside his plan, I think the Saints can win. And I don't think that the Bucs have much of a run threat. Their cornerback situation is as brutal as it gets. Spencer's got a very good chance in this football game, and I actually give him a very, very, very good chance to win this game. Expect the Saints to be 1-0 next time we talk on this show. With that, ladies and gentlemen, that really wraps up the prequel, the prologue, the beginning, whatever you would like to call it, first episode of Red Zone Hard Knocks, New Orleans Saints edition. We're going to be following the New Orleans Saints today to the end of the season. No matter how bad it gets, no matter how great it gets, we're following them every step of the way. Next episode, we're going to be talking to Coach Spencer after his game with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, win or loss. We're going to talk to Coach and see how did the game go? Did it go the way you thought it would? What was your plan, etc.? We're also going to check in with one of the Saints beat writers. He's going to be on the road with the team throughout this first month of the season. We're going to talk to him about what he thinks of the team, and we may even get a player or two on the show as well. With that, thank you for tuning in. This has been Red Zone Hard Knocks, New Orleans Saints edition, episode 1, the prologue. Thank you for tuning in. Let me know if you enjoyed it or not. Otherwise, this is Adele signing out. Tune in later next week for episode 2 of the show. Thank you again.